Hi there. My name is Tina Franzen. I'm the Technology Services Consultant for Trillium Lakelands District School Board. In this video, I'm going to try to do my best to show you how to get started with Scratch. With this video, I would like to cover the following information: how to create teacher accounts, add students, use studios, sprites, backgrounds, and exploring the blocks. And hopefully that's going to be successful in this video and that you feel comfortable with moving forward with using Scratch with your students. We have a resource to help here at Trillium Lakelands District School Board, and it is a TLDSB coding site. And to access this site, it is tldsb.ca/coding. So what we're trying to do here is build resources to help our educators use Scratch into not just Scratch, but many other coding platforms in their schools. But this video in particular is going to focus on Scratch. On the left-hand side here, you're going to see Scratch, and I can click on that. And so far, I do have a video here about how teachers can request a teacher account. And here's a video that I've borrowed from another educator about creating a new class in Scratch. I'm actually going to address that right now in this video, and I'm hoping to post this video on this site when I am done. All right, so I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm just going to go to Scratch. One thing I want to make sure you know as educators is that we sign up for the right account. So what you'll want to do is sign up for an educator account. And to do that, I found the quickest way to get there is to scroll to the very bottom of this website. And along the bottom, you're going to go under About and click on Educators or for Educators. And you guys see this purple strip here, and this is important because the purple bar is kind of like my quick go-to to know that if somebody is signed in correctly with an educator account. What you'll want to do is make sure you click on Teacher Accounts here. You do not want to click on the Join Scratch. That's just your general Scratch account. That's just for the general public. What you want to do is go here, Teacher Accounts, Request an Account. So you're going to click on that. You're going to create a username and a password, and you're going to have a few steps here and follow through those steps to then request a teacher account. Scratch is pretty good at getting back to you fairly quickly with saying, yay, you're good to go. But please don't plan this like 10 minutes before you're going to use Scratch with your class for the first time. Highly recommend you don't do that. All right, so make sure you go through that registration process. You will get an email indicating that you're good to go, and then I'm going to take you to the next step. Okay, so now you put in your request, you're going to get an email back from Scratch saying you're good to go. When you're good to go, you're going to sign in and you're going to see this purple strip here, and this is going to indicate you're in that teacher account. And also take a look, My Classes, Educator Resources, and Teacher Account FAQ. So some helpful resources here right out of the gates. Now, this is not present for those of you who create accounts, just a general Scratch account. All right, so what I'd like to do, of course, is, hey, create my class. So clicking on my classes, I would like to create a new class. So let's say this is going to be my grade for 2020, 21 account. Sounds good. I can do a little description if I like, just due to time. I think I'll just leave it at that and add class. So what I'd want to do now is, of course, I would like to make sure I have students added to my class. So what I'd like to do is go to the Students tab, and I'm going to add students. And you can see there's a couple ways of doing this. So I can add one student at a time or add multiple students. And there are two ways to create multiple accounts. You can create a sign up link, which is really easy. I like this because you can just post it in your Google Classroom. So student sign up link, I click on that. And right, see, take a look at this. Usernames must not reveal the identity of students. So remember, I wanted to create accounts that are going to be safe. So this is where it's really important that you have a conversation with your students when they create a username to not be, let's say, their first name and their last name. I would kind of avoid student numbers as well, but I'll leave that up to you because student numbers are not as maybe private as we think they are. So that's just a side note there, but you can go ahead, decide what those usernames are going to be. Maybe want to have the students write it down in a safe space, and then what their passwords are going to be as well. Now, you as the educator can reset their passwords, which is really nice. And I know that this comes up, but let's say that student does forget their password, you can go back in and you can reset their password. So that's a really nice feature here as well. Okay, so I'm going to check this box saying, yes, I agree. Oh, look, take a look at this. So I agree to remind students to not use their real name, school name, contact information, or student ID numbers, just as I kind of indicated right there. So we're being really safe. I'm going to click get link. There we go. And now I'm going to copy that and I can now paste that in my Google Classroom. So now you're good to go. So now you have a teacher account. Now you've generated that link where you can add your students in. They could just have to click on that link and they're going to come in and they're going to be in kind of like your Google Classroom in a way for the Scratch environment. Now, one other piece I want to talk about before we get actually in the Scratch environment is studios. So studios, and you'll see right here, is kind of like a class folder. So if there's a project you're going to be doing with your class, you'll want your students to share their programs with you through the studio because that's really the only way you're going to see them. Unlike in a Google Classroom, you can put out an assignment, and you're going to see the thumbnails, and you can go back and go take a look at all of their work. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way in Scratch. If students create projects, is kind of like actually in a Google Drive. If they create something in Google Drive and they haven't shared it with you and it's not tied to your any assignments in Google Classroom, you can't see it. Well, same idea here. So what you're going to do is create a new class studio. And let's say I'm trying out Scratch. Like could be just my first studio, right? We're all going to try Scratch. We're going to play around. We're going to learn, and maybe even having your students become the trainers in the classrooms. Like, hey, this is what this does. This is what this does. You have them become the experts and share. So you want to give them an opportunity to share and then share their code with you because I'm sure after they play and see some really neat outcomes that they'll want to share that project with you, and then you can therefore show it to the rest of the class and so on. Okay, so I'm going to create a studio name. I can have a description if I like, and then I'm going to go to add a class to studio. Perfect. So when students are done their projects, they will be given an option to add to a class studio, and they can choose this one, and then they're good to go. Let's actually get into Scratch now. So if I click on Scratch right here, this is just going to take me to the landing page. And I can look at all the resources and all the other projects that are out here to get me some ideas. But I'm going to, for this video, click on Create. Now, Scratch has been updated. So this is actually Scratch 3.0. So some little tweaks, if you've been in here before and you're in Scratch 2.0, you'll see it very similar, but there are some nice subtle changes at the same time. All right, so here we go. There we have our area where we're going to code. We have our block codes here, and we have our sprite. And this is the stage that the sprite is going to be interacting in. So if we're going to code here, you will see the output here. What I'm going to show you is because on my list of things I want to look at was actually about the sprites themselves, the back, and I want to look at the backdrops here, how you can change them, what your options are, and then getting into the blocks themselves. So I can at this point click on this garbage can, and this is a nice version of 3.0. It wasn't quite as simple or as intuitive to get rid of any sprites. So I could click on the garbage can right now and it's like, no, I don't want to work with Scratch today on this particular project. I can choose a new sprite. I am going to do that for this particular project just to get you started for this video. And now I need a new sprite. So I need a new character. So to do that, on the bottom right-hand corner here, I can choose a sprite. You'll notice there's some options here. I can search for a sprite, so I can choose for one. I can design one. I can actually paint a character myself. I can do a surprise one where, hey, why don't you pick a sprite for me? Or I can upload a sprite. So if there's a character that the students want to use, it could even be an image of themselves, they could upload that here in this environment. So it's a really kind of cool piece that you can do here. All right, what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to click the surprise. All right, I have a guitar to work with. Sounds great. Okay, now let's get a stage. So to get a stage, the default being just a white background right now, I'm going to get the backdrops here. I can click on this, Similar idea, by the way, those menu items, I can draw my own background. I can upload my own background, and this time I'm actually just going into the backdrops that are available. You can see they're trying to help you with some filters here if you didn't want to scroll through all of these. So maybe because a guitar populated, I'm going to go to music and see what we have. So I'm going to maybe pick this guy. So this theater. Excellent. I can actually move. You see, I can move the sprite wherever I want. And I want you to note while I'm moving this sprite and I drop it and I just stop moving it, you will see that it has an ordered pair here. So this is the x coordinate, this is the y coordinate. Really important to note. So there's already tying in some great math. So maybe you're thinking, well, how do I know where the x and y is? Like, what's the relative? How far over can I go to the right and to the left for my x values? And how high and how low can I go for my y values? So I am going to jump down to backdrops again for just a moment. And I would like you to see that there's going to be, and I think if I just type in grid, there we are, this one. I'm going to bring this to the stage for just a moment just so we can have a quick conversation about this stage. And take a look here. You'll have your ordered pair here of negative 240 and of course our y being 0. So we can go as far over to as negative 240 before it's cut off. And you can see here as far as positive 240 on the x-axis, you can go as high up as 180 and as low as negative 180 on our y-axis. So this is a great introduction for our students in terms of that Cartesian grid, and now we're putting things in application. So it's not just about give me the ordered pair for this. You can even say, I'll just do a quick little example of this, where I want this guitar to be in a certain location. So what I can do is, and we're going to get into the blocks now anyways, what I can say is here's one block, go to, and you'll see that this number here for the X, this number here for Y is automatically populating where my item is at the moment. But let's say I want it to be at 0, 0. I can bring this, drag this in. I can change the numbers while it's over here as well, just to let you know. But what I'm going to do is just actually drag over the block, and I'm going to click 0, tab over, hit 0, and then I'm going to click on this block right here. And let's take a look what happens to the guitar. So the guitar, the center of the guitar, because that's the relative point there, is now at 0, 0. And now this is where you can have your students explore. So if I want to change it, let's say to a negative x value, let's say a negative 100, and I'm going to keep my y 0, and this is where we can really get into the math conversation, and I get a little excited, is now we're going to talk about how we're moving horizontally, and we're moving to the left in the negative direction, but you'll see that we didn't move up or down, of course, on our y. And I'm going to do the same thing. Let's say if I want to go to a positive 100 and click, and now we can see it going to the right. I can repeat this, of course, by, let's say, keeping my x to be 0 and now changing my y, and you can model then moving up and down. Just how the kids explore, and they'll actually get a sense of how the Cartesian grid works and how the ordered pair x and y work as well. So a really great introduction to the Cartesian plane and x and y ordered pairs. And it's just a great natural way of introducing that mathematical concept. Okay, so now that we're talking about the blocks, well, I'm going to change my backdrop to what it was before. So I should be able to, going to grab that again. Let's go to music and theater. There we go. Now it does say we have 4 backdrops here, so I feel like I'm probably missing something here about how to get all the different backdrops that were available to me. But that's okay. I'll just leave it for now. Not a big deal. It's right here. And you can see my ordered pair is still the way it is. Now I want you to notice something. This is really important because it looks like that block of code that I had originally just disappeared. You know, that X and a Y one. It didn't disappear. What you'll have to note is that in the top right-hand corner, you can see a watermark. And this is actually, I can do some code for the backdrop itself. So we can get really sophisticated with that type of coding where it's kind of like telling a story and when this backdrop appears and all these things happen. But that's not this video for today. But I just wanted to make a note that your code did not disappear when you change your backdrop, when you're playing around. All I have to do is now click back on my sprite. And there we go. There's my line of code that I've already been playing with for my guitar. Okay, let's explore quickly here. Here are these blocks of code. I can do a couple things. I can click on the left here to get the new blocks of code, or I can even just scroll up and down, and I can see all the blocks of code as well. And they do a pretty good job about just clunking those type of block codes in under these things like motion, look, sound, that all kind of fit underneath those sections. Yeah, and they're color coded, which is nice and helpful as well. The first ones I want to go to are the event blocks. Now, the event blocks are also called hat blocks, and they're the way how we start this off. And you can see that they're actually capped off at the top. So it's kind of like this is where we start. Because when we do coding, we're going to go in sequence, usually. This happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And then when we get in conditional statements, which will be another video, we'll then get into, well, if this happens, then this happens. If not, then this happens, and so on and so on. I just want you to be comfortable with the fact that these are our starting blocks. You can play with these as to what these mean. For example, when the green flag is clicked, it's exactly that. So if I were to click this here, and let's change our values. Let's say I'm going to go down to, let's say, negative 100. Oh, not down. This is down, of course. So my X this time is 0, my Y is negative 100. And yes, I could click on this particular block, but this time I'm actually going to start it off with the green flag. So to do that, I can choose to click here, or good habit is to start clicking over here, because if I have more than one set of code, I may want a couple of things happening at the same time. Okay, green flag. And there we go. Now the guitar has moved into the location I wanted it to. Great way to start. I can build from there and do a whole bunch of more coding, and I will do that in just a moment. But I want to show you some other options. Maybe I don't want it to be with the green flag when it starts. I can have it with the space bar. If we click on the drop down menu, you'll see other options, up arrow, down arrow. So maybe you can even start thinking about moving a character. When you're moving left, you could have the left arrow. Moving right, you could have the right arrow. Have the kids explore. They'll come up with the best way that they like to have things, and kind of gives them that nice control of how they want their game or their project to start. All right, so those are the event blocks. I'm going to jump down to control blocks for just a moment. I really like these control blocks because they really, as they indicate, control the situation. Where the wait block can be very handy if something's moving a little too fast. Let's say you're moving something, let's say gliding over, and then here, what could happen is like, doop, doop, something happens very quickly. So what you could do is, hey, move over here, wait for maybe, let's say, half a second, and then move back. So I can model that really quickly. So we did have it go to here. Let me put in a wait. I'm not going to say a full second. I can just do, let's say, 0.5. And let's go back to our motion block for just a minute. And let's say I want to, instead of just going to a specific location ordered pair, maybe what I'd love to do is maybe move so many steps. Now, this is automatically set up to be in a horizontal position. And the 10 would be, since it's a positive number, it will go to the right, but you can put a negative number and you will move to the left. If you want, you could have the kids explore more down here. Change X, change Y. So changing X is kind of like moving 10 steps. And again, negative, positive would change the direction, either going to the right or to the left. But the Y is where you're specifically now going up or down. So you could have the students explore that. And which would you use to move forward and backwards, up and down? So let's say for this, I'm just going to actually say change Y. I'm going to move up 10 units. And let's now click the green flag, because we're always testing our code. You want to see, is it going to do what I want it to do? Green flag, go to 0, negative 100, wait 5 seconds, and then move down 10 spaces. Now, I'm going to actually move it kind of in a random spot in the stage, just so we can see it moving to that 0, negative 100, because it already did that. And then wait 0.5 seconds, and then change Y by 10. So going down 10 units. Clicking the green flag there and there. Oh, and I said down. So I love that. I'm really glad it went up, of course, because our Y value is positive 10. So we could talk about that. It's like, we have to make sure we understand we're going up by 10. So that was great. I said down, I saw it go up. I'm like, oh, why did that happen? Read, analyze. I'm like, oh yeah, I have a positive 10 here for my Y. If I wanted to actually go down, minus 10, this is where we're testing our code again, put my guitar in a random spot, click the green flag, and there we go. If they found, of course, if 10 wasn't far enough, that they wanted to go even lower, well, then of course that's when you have that conversation. It's like, okay, well, maybe not -10. Do we make that -10 bigger or smaller? And in an absolute value type way. So for example, if I go -20, it will take you down 20 steps further down. Okay. So if I click on the flag, and you'll see that it goes down 10 more steps than it did previously because we're now going the full distance of -20 instead of just going down 10. All right, so that's a lot of that in terms of movement. You've got your hat block to start off the event, and we used a control event for waiting. When we get into conditional situations, and not in this video, but these are all here. This is where it's great, where you can control that, hey, if I want to say that that guitar to move up and down, and maybe I want that to happen 10 times, rather than coding this over and over again 10 times, I could use something like basically a loop. So I can do if then, I could do repeat until. There's a few things that we could do here, or even just the repeat block itself. There's lots of different things you could do here. It's great. Kids can have a lot of fun and they could experiment and come up with the best ways. Quickly, all right. So looks, these are the look blocks. Hey, hello, and so on. The difference between these two blocks of code, of course, being this one already has like a wait statement built in, so that when it says hello, 2 seconds, and then it disappears. Otherwise, if you use this block, it'd be like hello and gone. So this is where you can have the conversation which works best for the students. And you can, of course, change the time slot here so that it could be quicker or it could be longer. And of course, the more they say here, because you can actually change the word hello and say as much as you'd like, you'll probably want to increase that time in seconds so that it's not just like this blip of something written down. Okay, switching costumes. So just quickly about the sprite itself, it does sometimes have different costumes. Let's take a look here. If I look at the costumes for the guitar, there's the costume that is currently up right here. And if I were to click on two, it looks like there's a little bit of a signs here to make it maybe look like it's making sound. So you could switch between the two so that you can make it look like it's making music. So that's what this one's doing, is where you can switch the costume. I can alternate from between A and B so I can make it look slightly different. There are other sprites that look like they're walking or they're flying, they're running. Have the students explore those costumes. And again, you can actually even change this a little bit, where let's say I didn't want a red guitar. I could click on that red right there, and maybe that's the blue, but let's take a look. Let's experiment. So if I click on the red here and I want to click, let's say green. Oh, there you go. So I can change it so that it's a green guitar, and I'd want to make sure I go to where all the red parts are and change that. You would want to also, if you're going to change costumes, probably do the same thing for the second one, just so that it's consistent. But again, maybe not. Maybe the kids just want to have fun with that, where it goes from alternating between green and red. I'm going to undo that. And the students, again, can have lots of fun with this, make it their own look. Yeah, so you can, this is where you can change size, you can set size. I really like this. We can even get in that, again, in mathematical conversations about dilations. So what if I were to set the size to 50%, what should happen to my sprite? What if I were to set it to 200%? What would happen to my sprite? So you can do all of those fun things. I'm going to jump down to sound. You can play, obviously, because I have a guitar selected, it automatically updated my sound options here. So I could, if I click on this, and you're not going to hear it, but it would make this a little bit of a sound. Click on the drop down menu, and you can see I can go the C, D, E, F, and so on. And of course, you can make some music now with your guitar by repeating blocks and making the different notes. All right, stopping all sounds, pretty self-explanatory. The volume, same idea. And now our event blocks, we looked at those already. So exploring there about how we can get our code started. Control, we talked about sensing. Sensing's neat. Again, this is back to maybe more when we get a little more sophisticated, but it doesn't have to be hard. It's like, well, okay, well, let's say the guitar, when it touches, let's say, something red or blue, something like that, something could happen to it. So I could set up that scenario with a control block where I can say if, and you'll notice this shape here. All right, so take a look at that. And if I go to sensing, oh, take a look here, touching, things like that. So I can actually drag those into those spaces. So if that happens, then this can occur. So there's some really neat things you can do with these blocks. Operators is where, again, the math side of me gets a little excited because these are math blocks that I can enter in. Again, take a look at these shapes here that we can, so these hexagons can actually slip nicely into those control blocks that you saw earlier. And even these circular, if you take a look, I can slip any of these operators inside any of these circular ellipse type shapes where I can put those in so I can actually now take it to that next step further in terms of mathematics. And there's some great opportunities of doing that, like even simply creating a game. Let's say students wanted to make sure that the game was over after they lost 3 lives. So you can have that if statement, like where the game repeats itself until the life thing is maybe greater than 3, therefore your game is over. And you can get a little more sophisticated in the less than and greater thans and so on, but so much fun and so much opportunities here when you get into these operators. And we'll definitely do that in a future video. Variables, again, so much fun because you can have a little more control. I can set a variable for almost anything I want. So back to creating a game, I can create a variable called score, and I can keep track of the score. I can create other variables for almost anything I can think of, and that's the whole idea, is that students get the idea that variables can be many different things and how you use them in certain scenarios. So again, future video for sure. My blocks, now, this is where you can like go crazy and you can add your own blocks here. You can make functions. You can do all these things where you're just basically now taking control. Like, wait a minute, none of these blocks here do what I want to do. I can create my own block. Or better yet, I want to become like a super efficient coder and I want to create this rule where it's going to follow all these steps in just this little piece. So like I could take, let's say, 10 lines of code and make it into one. So that's just a neat piece that students can play with for sure. All right, so I covered everything I wanted to. I wanted to make sure that you just felt comfortable in the Scratch environment. Grabbing a sprite shouldn't be hard. I'm hoping not anyways. Getting that backdrop that you could use and just explore with the actual code here, the blocks, play around. You can't break it, which is the best part. Just keep playing around with it, add more sprites, add more code, see what happens, and have a lot of fun.